Not only have last night's election results brought much reaction from the U.S. ag industry, but also the Canadian ag community. Host of Real Ag Radio, Sean Haney, joins us now with the very latest. Sean, good to have you with us. So what are the potential positives from Canada from this result?
Hey, great to be with you here this morning. And a big result from the U.S. election last night. Indeed, President Trump definitely outperforming in not only in some rural areas, like you mentioned, but also in some very traditional Democrat strongholds. So a very strong mandate indeed. You know, from a Canadian perspective, we haven't heard a lot from Canadian farm groups as of this morning. I'm sure that is going to be coming as we head into the weekend. I think one of the benefits for sure, potentially, because the Canadian economy is so tied to the U.S., we are the most successful, two-way trading partnership in the world. A stronger U.S. economy should be and has been traditionally very good for Canada. Now, the caveat to that is, is there some sort of restriction on trade going forward between the two countries? We could probably expect that in some regard. But a strong U.S. economy is traditionally very good for Canada. Also, like on the ag front, I think one of the positives here, there's been a lot of concern from the Canadian pork sector, as an example, about Proposition 12 out of California, as an example. Canada has a trade deal with the U.S., not with California. Maybe now, if the Republicans control all three areas of government in the U.S., potentially even in the House, that in the Farm Bill, Proposition 12 could be dealt with, and that would alleviate some of the concerns from a trade perspective from countries like Canada.
Right, and of course, we know there's always a lot of discussion when it comes to Canada, U.S., and Mexico. What do you see going forward with this new administration on those fronts?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of concern about what happens now with the USMCA agreement. We heard during the campaign period that, really both parties were very interested in relooking at the USMCA or the new NAFTA. Much of this comes down to how much the Trump administration, how they treat the integrated value chain of some of the commodities, like beef and pork, for example. Heard a campaign speech from Vice President-elect J.D. Vance talking about how, we're kind of done with these integrated value chains with other countries. We need to bring all of that back to the U.S. So if you apply that to an agriculture perspective, that's going to have an impact on the protein sector. For example, there's going to be some rough road here between the three countries leading up to July 1st of 2026, where that review period begins. Last week, President Trump-elect talked about how, many times U.S. allies are far worse to the U.S. than some of the U.S.'s enemies. Well, there's no greater ally for the U.S. than Canada, so that's going to be some pretty big words that Canada's going to need to pay attention to. As well, Mexico was threatened on the weekend with upwards of 100% tariffs if they don't deal with the southern border. So there's a lot to be worked out here, and of course, it's going to give us lots to talk about here in the next 4 years for sure.
A lot to talk about. That's host of Real Ag Radio, Sean Haney. We appreciate your time. And you can catch Sean on his show, Real Ag Radio, which airs at 4:30 p.m. Eastern weekdays on Rural Radio, channel 147 on Sirius XM. And we'll talk to him again on Market Day Report tomorrow.